I wonder if we're gonna get in trouble on Twitter or X because we have that follow us on Blue Sky now at the bottom
Oh,
right now.
well, probably not.
Yeah, or maybe no one notices. Welcome to another episode of the Tiger Mining Report Tool Series, as we are now focusing on speed. I am Rogelio. Alongside me is Chris Brown. Of course, not the drug speed, the how fast a player can get down the line or stealing bases. And so, if you had a chance to read the article, it's out over on TigersMLReport.com, and it's the headlining article. And so, it's been, I feel weird because this is we haven't done anything in 2 weeks, and I know I had a couple of listeners ask if we're going to be doing some shows, and yeah, December is going to be a little busier than November, but honestly, I was out in Seattle for a week for work, and I was out actually doing a work podcast and setting up the first podcast or something like that. So the day job has gotten a little more interesting, but I don't have to travel for a while. I was out on the West Coast twice between October and November, and that jet lag stuff is real. But between that and everything, and there's the baseball season in terms of the hot stove is ice cold right now, except for the LA Angels, who apparently are just signing everybody. I mean, it's just the Angels signed Yakuchi today, and it seemed like they're the only team active right now. There's of course the Juan Soto discussions, but the Tigers did do a non-tender thing, which we'll get to here in a second, as it does affect the top 30 list. And also there was the Rule 5 too, we can talk about as well, as the Tigers made their selections on who they're going to make the 40-man roster. And of course the Rule 5 draft is coming up in a couple weeks, and usually we would do some sort of article or something about that, but I don't think the Tigers are going to, right now the roster's at 40, I believe, correct?
Roster's at 40, and they'd be picking, I think they have the 24th pick in the draft, so it's very unlikely that it gets to them with any player that they like still available. Yeah, so we probably won't be doing any kind of preview for the Rule 5 this year. Also, we're still kind of feeling the effects of the shortened 2020 draft, so there just aren't that many interesting players. The Tigers would have had the 10th or 11th pick last year, but didn't take anybody just because there was nobody to take. So maybe that'll pick up again in the future, but hopefully the Tigers don't have to worry about Rule 5 picks for another decade or so.
Yeah, I'm cool with that. I mean, honestly, that it just makes things a lot easier to project and do articles for versus trying to take a stab in the dark on a name that you and I may particularly like, but the Tigers have other ideas. Right now, currently is winter. Right now, they have winter ball right now that is going on in the Dominican Republic, and then beyond that, we'll also get to who the Tigers they claim the lefty from Boston, and as they designate Wilmer Flores for assignment. You could sign back for a minor league deal. We'll get to that too, because it is weird to see Wilmer Flores, who was once a top 5 prospect of ours. Just the amount of injuries, just not being able to stay healthy. Was not tender as well. The left-hander is Bailey Horn, who's been around in the minors for a while. And he did pitch in the majors this year too. So it gives another veteran to rebuild and see what they can do with. So
I think he pitched against the Tigers this year, if I'm remembering correctly. But yeah, I don't know. He's an interesting, hard-throwing lefty. All those moves, I don't know if we want to get into those now or we can do the speed list first or whatever, however we want to do it. But yeah, all those moves, I expect all those players to re-sign with the Tigers shortly. It's kind of something that we've learned from, and I should have thought of this beforehand, honestly, is that Scott Harris doesn't ever – if he could, he'd have 60 players in the 40-man roster, like they don't ever want to give up depth in any way. So the way they're doing this to make room for other guys is when you non-tender guys like that, they aren't subject to waivers. So other teams can't just snap them up. And then you can re-sign them to a minor league deal. And Eddie Bajek did a really good job on Blue Sky. If you follow him over there, if not, we retweeted it, but explained the whole thing and how oftentimes it's actually beneficial for the player who is making a minor league salary on the 40-man roster, they can get removed from the 40-man roster, re-sign as a minor league free agent for more money than they were making the year before. So it's good for them. And the Tigers have a major league quality player back in their system who that's not taking up space on the 40-man roster. So they're kind of having their cake and eating it too. And that's basically what's happening here. I think we don't know for sure with Wilmer Flores because there were all the, there was a lot of talk about him maybe not getting with the program in terms of, what they wanted him to do in terms of his pitching and things like that. But at the same time, just think back, I guess 10 months ago, not 10 months. What month are we in? Yeah. 9 months ago, 8 months ago, he's in spring training and it looked like they were grooming him to be like a future back end reliever. He was pumping high 90s with cut, showing his 2 breaking balls. He wasn't amazing, but it looked like, yeah, this is a guy they're grooming him for leading relief appearances. And then he just got rocked in AAA and was hurt twice. And that becomes a guy that they think that they can kind of do these roster manipulations with and not worry about losing him. And same with Eddie Leonard, right? Like he was awesome in spring training. He's got some red flags in his profile for sure, but he just was hurt for most of the year. And so he didn't really do much. And I think they feel like they could probably sneak him through. So that's all that is. Like, it does make us reconsider those guys as prospects on our prospect list, but I think they're still in the Tigers' plans. But we'll see. The great example that Eddie used was Brendan Hanafy was the same situation last year. He was on the 40-man roster in 2023. They removed him and then quickly re-signed him to a minor league deal for more money. He was making more in the minors than he was the year before when he was in the minors. Once he got to the majors, he was making major league salary. But and then he comes up again this year and he becomes kind of a crucial piece down the stretch. Like so it's not over for Wilmer Flores or Eddie Leonard or Ricky Vanasco by any means. These guys will probably still be around.
Yeah, especially for Flores, who I think that he might have rushed back a little bit if you think about some of the arm injuries a little bit, because he was a guy who expected to be called up at some point, even starting last year. And so there is a big league arm in there. And I know one of the things that he was working on beforehand was working on a third pitch, a change, or I believe it was another variation to a slider, where because the slider has more of a slurvy motion, it doesn't have that big sweeping action like you normally see with sliders. And so, but as far as Vadasco goes, I mean, they picked him up from the Dodgers. He's a guy who could easily be a spot starter for the Mud Hens next year. And as far as in going to Leonard a little bit, he's a guy who still doesn't really have a set position. And so, yeah, you're right. He doesn't have many more options, Austin, as Austin's indicated in the chat. So where do you put him? Do you put him in shortstop? Do you put him in center field? So there's still a lot of things you could do with that too. I know people are saying, well, Ryan Kryler still has a spot in this team. It's still November. Things can change rapidly.
Well, yeah, and think about it. It's sometimes it's hard to remember all the guys, but they added half a dozen guys to the 40-man roster last year and then quickly removed them. Devin Sweet was one of those guys, right? They added him to the 40-man, they got him through, and then he was in the minors for most of the year until they recently traded him to Philadelphia, and Philadelphia added him to their 40-man roster, I think.
Yeah.
But this is, like I said, this is just part of their pattern of trying to get as many, really, really strengthening the floor of the roster, I guess you'd say, or widening it out. If you pretend the roster is a pyramid or a triangle, and up here at the top it's Scooble and Green and so forth, and then they're just adding more guys at the bottom to give them that stronger base to come in and help. And I think it's a good system. It's worked out for them so far. And like I said, I don't think it's over for any of these guys with the Tigers. We'll see. And it wouldn't shock me if Bailey Horn is tossed right off the 40-man and before long. He's got a big strong arm from the left side. So did Joey Wentz. Bailey Horn hasn't thrown strikes. That's been his main issue. But he's an interesting arm. He's an interesting story. I joked about this before, but back in 2020 when we were all just sitting at home doing nothing, and I did an entire 5-round mock draft, every pick of the entire draft, and I published it on our old website.
I'm so glad you found it, by the way.
Yeah, I found my original document. Nobody read it, I don't think, because who the hell cared other than me? But it was just something to stay busy. But the final pick in that draft was Bailey Horn, And so I had looked him up 5 years ago to see what he was about, and he was an interesting power lefty. Has 3 other pitches. Just needs to throw more strikes, and that's the sort of thing that you hope that Lund and Federer and Nieves can help him work on.
Had his journey through the world.
Yeah, and here's an example of him pitching too. He was on, I believe he was on the Auburn roster too. Was he on the same staff as Casey Mize?
I don't think so. I think Mize, Mize graduated in 2018 or was drafted in 2018. I think Horn was a 2020 draft pick, and I think he started at JUCO before going to Auburn, and then he got hurt. So I don't know if he pitched at Auburn very much at all. Let me look. But yeah, the one thing that I dug up 4 or 5 years ago when I was doing that, and I tweeted it out again recently. So yeah, he was in Auburn in 2019. So he just missed Mize. But he's from West Texas, which is where, and this is, I don't know if other people remember this, because back at the Boston Marathon bombing, I remember kind of being glued to Twitter and the news at the time because of everything that was going on. Speaking of Boston Marathon, those yellow Boston Marathon jerseys there, that was a pretty good breaking ball too. Yeah. Right at that same weekend when they were looking for the guys who perpetrated the Boston Marathon bomb, there was a massive explosion in Texas at a fertilizer plant, just enormous. And it was like, oh man, all these news things going on. And that explosion was right down the street from where Bailey Horn had to play his high school baseball. And I think they had to move because the school was damaged. So just an interesting backstory that we might hear Johnny Kane talk about at some point this year if he sticks on the roster.
Yeah, I could. You know what? There's. Do you remember Jeff Facero, former Expos pitcher?
I remember. Jeff Facero. Yeah.
Yeah, kind of has that Jeff Facero vibe to him a little bit to me.
Yeah, guys that get to this point, they're here for a reason. You get drafted, you're there for a reason. You've got a good arm, you've got good stuff. It's just a matter of if can the Tigers hone it to a degree where he's useful out of the bullpen. And it's like I said, the Tigers felt like it was worth a shot, but I would not be surprised if he's they try to sneak him through waivers before long. Because we assume that they're going to sign some free agents in the off season, right? So this 40-man roster can't stick at 40 and do that. They're going to have to, unless they wait until spring training and put a bunch of people on the 60-day IL. But I don't think that's happening. So they're just kind of messing around with the fringes of the roster again.
Yeah, and that's where, and it was something too that's funny or not funny, but it was interesting. Stan brought over the chart that I sent you earlier, and the amount of revenue that they generated from TV. And so right now, the TV deal up in the air. I mean, the Tigers are going back to Diamond or whatever. It's FanDuel Sports now, and so fill in the blank. Essentially, it's going to be probably rotating in the next year or two. Who knows? But you can also get games on Amazon, but for a price, of course. But there's either way. If that revenue stream is not there, that could affect the offseason a little bit. I'm not saying that it will affect the Tigers, but there's teams minus the Angels who are, of course, the Angels are doing everything, but that this could affect it. But the one thing I wanted to mention too before we get to our list too, a great deal by the Royals. They picked up Jonathan India from the Reds. And it was, I know that at some point we're probably going to do another Motor City Metrics podcast, probably next week, the short holiday and all. It's been a little crazy and everything, but the Royals trade, I thought that was a very good deal for Kansas City, and to continue to stay aggressive and to build up from making the playoffs, trading Brady Singer, and you have a shortstop combination of Witt and India there. That's damn.
Yeah, well, so I mean, I still don't know where they're going to play India. I don't know if they're going to try to play him at second or third, or if they're going to put him in the outfield. I viewed it as an interesting trade, just having a trade that happened, right? But we've kind of talked about this in the past about hey, what about a Matt Manning for Jonathan India trade? And Matt Manning, of course, just kind of fizzled away. But yeah, it's interesting trading Singer. It feels like a deal that is going to be worse for both players. Like their home parks are going to be worse. I feel like India doesn't have a ton of power. He's a really good on base guy, at least in terms of working walks and stuff. He doesn't hit for a ton of average, but maybe that'll benefit him in a bigger park maybe he won't be chasing home runs and he could kind of spray the ball to the gaps. And Singer, I don't know, Singer doesn't have a huge home run issue, so he may end up being fine in Cincinnati. But I don't know. It'll be really interesting to watch that trade over the next couple of years to see, who ends up winning, if anybody. And it's fun. They're former Florida teammates, right? The same year, 2018, I think, the same year that Mize was drafted, they were taken.
Yeah, especially because correct me if I'm wrong, KC's more known to be a pitcher's ballpark, correct?
Yeah, I mean it's generally one of the hardest places to hit for home runs, and I think it's usually pretty good for triples. So it'll I don't know. I would expect both of their numbers to go down a little bit, but you never know. Maybe they both take off in their new orgs. Maybe they both have ideas that they can to help these guys improve. And then they got who
Joey
Weimer, for
Weimer.
Temperance's own, the Michigan legend, went to the University of Cincinnati, and he was also in that 2020 draft, I believe.
I think the Throwing Mules, I believe, or the Mule. I think they're the Mules. Temperance Benford Mules. I think I want to say that's the high school. Yeah,
maybe. Yeah, I could not tell you that one. I felt like wasn't he? He was originally with the Brewers, wasn't he?
I believe he was. That sounds right. No, but
yeah, Milwaukee. Yep.
So, fun fact about Temperance. It's a really cool. Nice. They have their games broadcasted on Toledo radio.
No, there you go.
I covered a high school game there between them and Grosse Pointe South, and it was one of the most interesting contrasts of all time. Here you are in the middle of nowhere, literally in the middle of nowhere in this football field. That's a really nice stadium, nice field, and this is in the playoffs. You have Temperance. It's kind of farm country. Then you have Grosse Pointe South. People coming down in their
Bentleys and Rolls Royces.
Well, it was even better. They came out in glam campers, and their North Face jackets and very fleece linens and stuff like that. Versus what you see in Temperance, which was like Carhartt. So it's Carhartt versus, as I call it, the North Face game. It was Grosse Pointe South. Was it Grosse Pointe South? Yeah, Grosse Pointe South. But anyways, it was rather funny watching going to the stadium there. And anywho, so that being said, we've let's get to the list and let's start.
We've raced around it for too long.
And fair warning too. One of the things too, I was thinking about and I was gonna ask about this and realize pulling clips of people stealing bases is not exactly the most sexiest thing in the world, but
yeah, I struggled a little bit to find clips of the guys running. We try to put up stuff during the season of like, hey, here's a stolen base, but typically only if it's a milestone or like here's the stolen base led to a run in some way. It's the same way with defense and like throwing. I don't know what we're gonna do for that, but it's the speed list is fun and it's interesting because there are guys on this list who probably won't sniff the major leagues. It's just they just happen to be very, very fast, and that may be the case with the hit and power lists too. But generally speaking, if you've got advanced hit and power tools, you got a better chance. But that doesn't mean they're not fun to talk about. And the main thing, kind of the general overview, is the uptick in organizational speed that we've seen. It wasn't evident on the stolen base numbers. The Tigers were still bottom 5 in baseball last year in steals. But if you remember during that final 2-run stretch, they kept bringing up the stat about the Tigers were, the spectacular going first to third, right? They taking the extra base, and they really were. They tied with the Dodgers for the most, according to Baseball Reference, the most advancement opportunities taken. It was like 49% they took. And if you go to StatCast, they're the third fastest team by sprint speed. So they're a fast team in the big leagues. And then down in the minors, they're stealing all over the place. I put up that tweet where they had 17 players steal 20 bases last year in the minors. What happened?
Oh, well, sorry. I was pulling up. I was trying to get rid of the full screen on that because I was trying to pull up stealing bases, and I was going to go with the honorable mention. But yeah, let me pull up that stat real quick here that we have.
I mean it's not nothing crazy, but like they went from having usually a handful of guys steal 20 bases a year to 17 last year. It was just they ran wild, and a lot of those guys were 2023 draft picks. Max Clark, Kevin McGonigal, Brett Callahan, David Smith, Who else? Who am I missing? I'm missing somebody else. And then guys they added in free agency: Patrick Lee, Bly Madris, and Ryan Valade stole a ton of bases in AAA. So they were just. I think it's an organizational thing now, and we see it again where the players they seem to be adding to the organization, even including Trey Sweeney, they like their up the middle players, and they like guys who have athleticism and can hit, which is that seems like a pretty good foundation if you're building a team. You want those things, and so yeah, we saw that, and that even extends to the most recent draft where they. I think I mentioned Jackson Strong and Woody Hedin and Jude Warwick as guys who are probably going to steal some bases next year. So they're adding a lot of speed to the organization and made the list a little bit more fun, but it also led to you're pulling up the honorable mentions. I ended up going with like 8 honorable mentions because there were legit that many guys who were kind of between average and above average runners.
The first runner goes, pitch, taking a called strike, throw down to second, and it is not in time. Gage Workman steals second base, and he just set the new Seawolves career record in stolen bases with number 64. He pulls out the base. He'll have to stick it back in.
I was going to pull a Ricky Anderson there, right? It's awesome.
Hey, what's that voice?
Yeah,
whose voice is that?
Forgot I was on that call there. Yeah,
and that's what that was the MILB, like, you know, their national tweet was talking about pulling a Ricky, like Raj said. But yeah, that was Gage Workman made the honorable mention. Stole, how many bases did he steal last year? Let's see. He stole 30 bases in 43 tries, so he wasn't super efficient, but he's always been an above average runner and really plus underway. You know, when he hits the ball to the gap, it's, you know, a double or triple pretty easily. And so that's, you know, one of his more impressive tools. And just another guy, I just didn't quite want to put him on the top in the top 5, just because, I mean, it was kind of arbitrary at this point. Like the top 3 or 4 are legitimately the fastest players in the system just by various timing methods. You know, stopwatches we take to the games, 60-yard dashes from scouting, you know, combine type things, showcases, and then when available, the StatCast sprint speed, which was really only available for Trey Sweeney. So he's another honorable mention. I think his sprint speed was 28.1 feet per second, which is 55, 60 grade speed. Who else do we put in the? I put Hao Yu Lee in the honorable mentions. I don't consider him particularly fast. He's probably an average runner, but really aggressive and really heady. I think he went 16 for 17 and still on base attempts.
Callahan, Brett Callahan.
Brett
I like
Callahan.
I like Carlos Mendoza, who does have a pretty good first step out of the box when he especially when he gets a hold of one. He has a pretty good quick first step, although he's a little banged up on injury, so I think his speed slowed down a little bit, not enough to where he's been. I think he'd be a little more aggressive on hits, but I noticed he was kind of taking a little easier on that approach there. And also, you mentioned Kevin McGonigal.
He's a 55 runner and another instinctual but guy who could steal 20, 30 bases a year. I think he may be less aggressive as he climbs up the ladder. And it'll be one thing that's interesting to see going forward, because a lot of these steals were coming in Lakeland, where Andrew Graham was known for being really good at kind of teaching base running and really encouraging guys to be aggressive. So we'll see if that continues down in low A, or if it follows Andrew Graham up to double A Erie this year. So that'll be something to watch for.
I think it'll follow up in double A Erie, because if you look at the prospects right now, I think that there's going to be the speed factor in why it was stolen bases too as well. Is I think there's a reason it's higher this year is because I think the home runs weren't the home run power isn't as prevalent as it was in years past. And so this is a team, by the way, that you look at during the Dombrowski years and even I think team speed has been, if you look back even the history of the Tigers in terms of from a development standpoint, Tigers have had a couple of, I mean, you look at Milt Kyler comes to mind, but they've never really had it's not a team that, like, even when stolen bases were a thing in the 80s, when you see that even in the 90s a little bit when it started kind of dying down, they always were, the Tigers were never been a team that was very, Sparky did not want to waste guys on base like that. And every manager has their philosophy, but it starts with the organization. But the Tigers have just never been, even Curtis Granderson, for all the speed that he had, he wasn't a stolen, but he was a guy who wanted to sell for power. He wasn't a stolen base guy. And I remember even reading Lou Whitaker, who was kind of a stolen base kind of, he had a lot of speed, but same thing. He was into more, he started getting more hitting for average, and he wasn't stealing bases, but it was all based off who was in charge of the organization at the time.
Yeah, and I think, when you think back over the last 25 years or so, like you mentioned, like there was a Milt Kyler, they had Brian Hunter, they had Cedeno the one year, like they had some guys who would steal bases, but it was always just one guy, really. They had Quentin Berry that one year, or Rajay Davis. They would have one speed guy. But I do think, and Mitch put it here in the comments, he said, I like copying the Brewers speed model. I think that's kind of what they're going to be going for in the future. Just 7-8 guys who are going to be threatening 20 steals a year. Everybody can run at any time. I think that's what they would like to do. Maybe not 7-8 guys, but at least 5. I'm thinking down the road of, like, I don't think Josue Briseño and Tyrone Lorenzo are going to be stealing and things like that. But I think that's what, you close your eyes and envision 3 years down the road when Max Clark is playing in center or left with Parker Meadows, and you got McGonigal, and you got whoever else is out there. They're going to be running a lot. So I do think that's part of the plan. I think the other honorable mentions were, we got John Peck in there. There were a lot of, like, really impressive stolen base totals. John Peck stole 33 bases and 39 tries in just 73 games. Like he was like, I'm going, and he took most bases. And who else do we have? We got McGonigal, we got Yuli, we got Mendoza, Callahan. David Smith is another guy from the 2023 draft who he only hit 198, but he led the Florida State League in walks and on base percentage, and so he stole a bunch of bases. But I'm not sure if that model is going to succeed going forward. But he was somebody who I felt like it was worth mentioning, which brings us to the top 5.
All right, and go ahead with start with number 5, and a guy who we've seen sometimes run a little crazy. It felt like he was like a gazelle out there. Like sometimes you see him running, and it almost like he was gonna grab it. Like he just, it was such an animated way he ran around the bases in Framber.
Yeah, Fredgerber Montilla. Again, like the number 5 guy probably could have fit in with all the other guys in the honorable mentions. He's somewhere between a 55 grade runner, maybe average to plus on given the day. But the fact that he was 19 years old and he was so aggressive and relatively successful, he stole 30 bases and 38 tries in just 68 games, and his success rate got better when he went from rookie ball to high A. And the main thing about him, you touched on it, is he's got above average speed, but it's mostly about the instincts and just the aggressiveness. He's just a super aggressive player, and we really saw that come to a head there at the end of the season. He struggled when he first got to Lakeland, but he really was a key member of the team in the playoffs. And you see a couple instances. I put a clip on there of him. He basically, I think I want to say, he got a hit, almost got picked off at first, but did a swim tag, stole second, moved to third, and then scored at home on a shallow sack fly, I think, or an error with another swim tag. He just got those. He's just all over the place. It's really aggressive, and I think that steals are going to be a big part of his game. And I also think he's really quick too, which helps him on defense. I think he's going to stick at shortstop because I think he's got the agility to do it. So that's why he won out over the other guys. Is I just thought he was a step above. And here's the video we could see right there. That was him almost getting picked off, swimming around the tag. He's safe. He tells him no. Yeah, he's very animated. So here he goes. He's stealing second in there safely. Doesn't hesitate to go to third. Just running, slides in there, and so now and then the shortly after, he comes on a grounder. Like that's scoring on that play is another swim tag. It just. And he's just a hype player too. So it's I think he's a guy who's really going to use his speed, even if it's not a plus, clock time for him all the time. He's going to use it to be a plus skill for him, and I think that's what made him worthy of number 5. Number 4 is a guy who was on the list last year, and I argued last year that he might actually be the fastest runner in the system in a straight line. In Dom Johnson, and we don't really have a great clip of him, unfortunately. Because he struggled to hit every time he comes up to Double A, or not even Double A, High A, West Michigan. He's done fine in Low A, but for whatever reason, he struggles when he gets to West Michigan. But he's a legit 70 runner. You know, he's a right-handed batter, and he gets to first base in 4.05 seconds usually. And he stole more bases this year than he did last year. Like last year, the complaint was that he wasn't using his speed on the bases very well. And this year he went 32 for 36, so very good. But still, he's a guy that doesn't get on base a ton, and so that hurts. And for whatever reason, he doesn't really play much center field at all. He plays a lot of left field. He's mostly known for running out of his hat. You know, when he's out there, like he's got good speed and it helps him play good corner outfield. But I don't know. I didn't put him up higher just because it doesn't play quite as well in games as it should, given the straight line speed.
Yeah, I was surprised he doesn't play more center field, but I kind of understand his range is. You kind of look him out there. His range is rather limited, comparatively speaking, to somebody like Max Clark or prior to that Parker Meadows. I mean, Parker Meadows can cover a lot of ground going left to right, and there's a difference when you're out there playing the outfield like that. I mean, it's if you're going to cover a lot of ground, like for not to say that John Johnson can't cover that like left to right, but I don't know. There's a significant difference in how you're tracking the ball going. I always I don't want to get these confused. Vertical or horizontal. Yeah, horizontal.
Yeah, and some of it is instincts. I think that sometimes guys just Derek Hill was a very, very fast runner and made a lot of spectacular catches, but he didn't have particularly strong instincts in center field. He was able to make up for it with his speed. Sometimes guys just don't have that. And part of it, honestly, is that unfortunately Dom Johnson, he's not probably a priority prospect or a priority prospect to them. So if there's a chance for Max Clark to play center field, they're going to let Max Clark play center field. Or right. If they have Roberto Campos in West Michigan, even though he's not going to be a center fielder, they'll play him in center field just because he's the higher priority prospect to them. So that's part of it. But he's very fast. There's no denying that. I talked to, I think last year I wrote that way back when he was in his perfect game All-American showcase, he actually ran a faster 60-yard dash than Enrique Bradfield, who was one of the few players this year who stole more bases than our number one player on our list. But we'll get to him in a second. So we're going now to number 3. Number 3 was one of the more exciting players to watch this year, Patrick Lee. Spent his college career. Where was he? He was in like Prairie View or something like that.
Oh yeah, no. So yeah, he was signed out of. He was playing the West Virginia Power, right? He was in the Indy League, correct?
Well, yeah, he played in the West Virginia Power was I think the draft league, and then he was in the Evansville of the Frontier League, and that's where they signed him out of. But he played NAIA baseball or something like that. He's just kind of a off the radar. Maybe he was Lehigh, I don't know. But yeah, immediately became a huge part for Lakeland, and then they bumped him up to West Michigan, and he was a huge part of that team, and he eventually made it up to Erie. He actually even was added to the Toledo roster at one point, though. Although I don't know if he even actually made it. That was just kind of a procedural thing. I don't know if he ever left Erie, but very, very fast. Although it's interesting, he plays extremely fast, and we timed him multiple times in Lansing, home to first, and it wasn't for whatever reason his swing doesn't give him great home to first times. It's typically pretty average for right-handed hitter. It was close to 4.3 seconds, which is 50 grade speed. I did get him 4.15 once, which is 65 grade speed or whatever. 55, no, whatever. But once he gets moving, yeah, he's just really quick, and he's also another guy who's super aggressive, and he'll go first to third, he'll go second to home, he'll go first to home, and he's a guy who did play some center field. He played more corners, I think, but that may have been because he also has an absolute rocket of an arm.
Yeah, but that throw in Lansing where he just came up with a laser beam to I think he gunned down somebody at second base. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, he had a handful of outfield assists. He even got one in Erie, and I think he only played 30 innings up there. But so yeah, he's just really tooled up kid, and the speed played for sure on the base paths. He led the organization in the I did that made up stat. It's stolen bases per plate appearance. He had 35 steals in 243 plate appearances. 68 games, he stole 35 bases, only caught 4 times. So very aggressive, very fun, and that's why he's number 3 on the list. And that brings us to number 2, who he's no stranger to any of these prospect lists. It's Max Clark.
He's also looking for a BMW currently.
I saw that. I was looking at, he had tweeted about his Corvette, and then he also tweeted something about Call of Duty that made absolutely zero sense to me. And I wrote about video games for 17 years. So I was like, what is he talking about? Like, it was all this slang. But in any event, yes, here is Max Clark from the game that Rogelio and I went to this year, where he got a double and a triple in the first inning. This is his triple. Well, just, you don't have to be a scout to see that he gets from home to third very quickly. Like, I guess my camera work could be a little bit better, but yeah, he's very, very fast. He's the guy, and I wrote this in the article too, that even though he stole 29 bases, 29 for 33 in 107 games, he has the speed to steal a lot more bases than that, and I think he is generally more aggressive than that. I think he was just kind of, I don't know if he was just relaxing or being a little bit passive this year on that front. So right now his speed plays best when he's just putting the ball in play, beating out infield singles, or hustling a single into a double, or hit the ball at the gap and speeding to third, like we just saw.
That's a good question here by Matt. Is stride length measured while looking at speed, like a pitcher's extension?
I'm sure that teams look at stuff like that. I remember back when I was playing soccer in the mid '90s, they had us sprint like the 60-yard dash, and they had us run across the baseball field so they could measure our strides at full speed. And so I think that there's aspects of that are probably measured. I couldn't tell you, it's as somebody without access to any kind of information like that. I don't know what to tell you other than I would say, yeah, like, you look at Parker Meadows when he's running and his stride is 14 feet long, and that helps make him very, very fast. And they do talk about runners and their gait, right? Like Riley Green has a very unusual gait. We kind of they talk about it, and they're trying to fix sometimes where guys, their foot strike, are they landing on their heel or the ball of their feet or things like that. But I'm sure the teams look into that as like, hey, this guy, he could fix his foot strike. We could get him to stride longer, and he'd be faster. I'm sure that's something they look into. So that's a good question.
Yeah, that's a good question, because right now sprint speed is calculated by the player within the 1 second window. The calculation is given speed of measurement in feet per second. Calculates the distance covered by the player within that 1 second window, given a speed measurement in feet per second. So that's how sprint speed is qualified. So you're looking at somebody who's, I ran cross country, so my stride was a lot different. A sprinter's stride is a lot different than a cross country stride, as an example.
Mm-hmm.
And that's my amateur point of view on that. But that is a stride. You're always measured by your stride when you're running. So I'm assuming there's some sort of level of that too with baseball.
Yeah, it just in the very basic sense, if somebody who's like 6'5" is gonna travel faster in 1 second than somebody who's 5'5", just because of their but then there's more to it, right? Like the stored energy in your thighs and things like that, and how fast you actually are. But but Max Clark isn't a particularly like long strider, but he's just fast. He's very quick. His measurement times are typically around 4.1 from the left side, which is like 60 grade speed. Sometimes it's 4.05, sometimes it's 4. So he'll get up to like 70 grade speed when he's beating out a infield signal. But like I said, like he's a guy that I think with a little bit more refinement, a little bit more aggressiveness, could steal 40, 50 bases in a year without much trouble. That's just one aspect of his game. Everything, the hitting, the power's coming along, the defense is there. So very, very exciting player. Very easy to see why they took him in the first round the other year.
Yeah, it's a smart baseball IQ. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, it's advanced, still not even 20. So a lot to like there. But we finished with Seth Stevenson, number one player on the list for 2 years in a row. He stole 70 bases last year. He stole 60 this year, but actually increased his success rate from, I think it was 82% to 87%. So he went 60 for 69 this year. Very nice.
Nice.
it's hard to stop him. He's a right-handed hitter, but he gets to first base in under 4 seconds routinely, which is 80 grade speed and an 80 grade home to first time at least. It's ridiculous. He's got like rocket shoes, springs.
Throw to second base.
And here you see him stealing his 60th base this year with the Whitecaps. He said 130 steals over the last 2 seasons. It's pretty good. He's a guy who's very fast. He's also very, very aggressive and pretty instinctual. And that's how you end up stealing that many bases, right? Like it's he's not a big guy at all. Like if you want to talk about stride length, his stride is probably, a 1.5 feet shorter than Parker Meadows, but he just gets going to top speed very quickly, very good at stealing bases. And again, like it remains to be seen, what he can do in his pro career, because there's not a ton of power there. The hit tool is okay, but I don't know how he's going to handle, really truly upper level advanced pitching. But if he can do it a little bit, that speed is going to give him a chance, because it's a game changer. And he's another guy that doesn't play a ton of center field, but again, that's, I think, more out of circumstance. It's more out of, he was playing next to Max Clark, but it's also he's a guy who played shortstop and second base throughout high school and college even. And so he doesn't have a ton of reps in the outfield compared to some other guys. So, but if he could certainly handle all 3 outfield positions, and with that speed and with, he's got some decent on base skills because he gets hit all the time, which is something to keep in mind. But the fastest player in the system, one of the fastest players in the minor leagues. He's not Chandler Simpson, who they always talk about having 90 grade speed and 10 grade power. Because Chandler Simpson stole 105 bases, something like that this year. But Seth Stevenson, certainly one of the 3 or 4 fastest players in minor league baseball. So that's why he's number 1 in the system, and that's our best speed.
And then I think coming up, what do we have coming up, Chris? Because I'm due to.
Well, it depends. I mean, we wanted to do one for defense. That one's hard. It's hard to show. And back in the day, we used to do it for basically every position, but I don't think that's worth it. We could kind of split it into infield, outfield, and
I think we do by infield,
catcher.
outfield. Yeah, we could probably do it that way. Yeah, that'd probably be easier, because everybody plays multiple positions too.
Yeah, I mean, that's the big thing now. Nobody is sticking at shortstop or second base or third base for the whole year. So that's something. And then and we could do a throwing arm, and then we'll probably then we'll get into pitching. So talking about fastballs, breaking balls, changeups, and control. So it's these are the tough ones, and they're not going to be nearly as long as the early ones, because there's only so much you can say, and there's not as much video. But I don't know. I hopefully people find it helpful. I mean, one of the fun things about it is it kind of lets you examine the top prospects and compare them against their peers, and it also gives a chance for these other guys who aren't on our top 30 or whatever to give them their flowers a little bit, because they still have skills that make them very good at certain aspects of professional baseball, and that's nothing to sneeze at.
Yeah, especially guys like, for example, Jose De La Cruz from Made a Power List, who is a guy who, when he gets a hold of the ball, really, really hits it with a lot of power, and there's something to be said about that too. And there's something to be said about Seth Stevenson, who we had a chance to talk to on the podcast, and guy who used to play the infield and has worked really hard. And all these guys have worked really hard at their craft. And so that is worth mentioning. And I know we're going to be getting the best fastballs too. And so December's going to be a fun month. And speaking of December, by the way, if you are looking for a Christmas gift for your loved one, now we have the Redbubble store. So we're now on Redbubble, and they have 30% off right now. And they have all sorts of sizes. So they have shirts, they have bumper stickers, you can even get a dog blanket kind of thing, but they have they have a baseball sleeve shirt. So they have all sorts of sizes too. They do have bigger sizes for you bigger folk out there. So also, there's 3XL. There's a shirt that has a 5XL on there too as well. And if you're a fan of the old throwback logo, the Tigers SRD logo, we have that there on $15.59, and then Morrissey Metrics. And then, if you feel like just Brazil, anyway, all this goes back into supporting the podcast, the website itself. And so, here's the one I'm talking about. So there's up to 5XL. But there's a bunch of stuff on there you can go to. So go to redbubble.com, search for Tiger Minor League Report or Tiger's ML Report, and find all this gear. And there's, you look at this. You have iPhone safe. There's a dad hat. You have the bucket hat. So if you want to do your run DMC look or whatever, that's fine. There's a bunch of stuff on there. Just total, even zipped up hoodies too. So stickers, you name it, on there. So for whatever reason, if you want a poster, there you go. But either way, I props to my wife on this, getting some of this stuff designed out there. So, you look, even a fridge magnet. So there you go.
That helps. I would like that. We need like beer openers, bottle openers.
Yeah, we do.
Pretty fun. I don't. The one thing I don't think we discussed before was the players that they added to the 40-man roster, or the players that they left off, like they didn't protect. And I don't know if we want to touch on that real quick, or
absolutely.
So I mean that was one of the things, and this led to an internal discussion that we kind of took to the Discord, and I don't know, take it to the air here and see what you guys think. But the Tigers added 3 relievers to their 40-man roster. They added Chase Lee, who they acquired from Texas. They added Tyler Owens, who they acquired from Texas, and they added Tyler Madison. Now, Tyler Madison was on our top 30 list last year at one point when we named him the reliever of the year in the system. But 3 relievers, leaving a handful of guys unprotected. Nothing like shocking. Like there are a couple players that I wouldn't be totally stunned if they get taken. Like I could see a team taking a chance on Garrett Burhan maybe and throwing him in the bullpen, or RJ Pettit, but probably not likely. Some of the other big names, Justice Bigby wasn't protected, but again, he didn't have a very good year, and it's hard picturing him sticking on a roster. Roberto Campos wasn't, but again, hasn't been out of high A, probably not going to get taken. Joseph Montalvo was the prospect, that the highest ranked prospect they got in those Texas deals. He was not protected, but again, like Campos, not out of high A, so it'd be kind of a shock to see him taken. So I don't think the Tigers have a huge list of players to worry about getting selected in Rule 5, but in the relievers, they got some interesting arms. Chase Lee is that side armor. It's one of the lowest slots. I looked it up. We have like the 4th or 5th lowest arm slot in the majors, and his fastball's only 88, 89, but it plays much harder than that because of the interesting look. And he's got a sweeper that's got like 28 RPMs, so 2,800 RPMs, I should say. So he's going to theoretically give the Tigers a different look that we haven't seen out of that bullpen for a while. So that one made some sense. I didn't have him as one of the guys I predicted they would take, but I wasn't shocked. I did mention him as a guy that they could. Owens, we saw down the stretch with Erie. He pitched in just about every playoff game, I think.
He was really, really valuable for Erie down the stretch.
Yeah, there was one game, I think their second game against Akron, where he was on the mound and the defense just absolutely melted down behind him. But I think he came out there the next game and got the final outs, or maybe not the next game, but he got the save in the first game. Here's Chase Lee we're looking at. So you can see it's kind of, he drops down and it's a sidearm, really low slot, and
almost like my former lefty Mike Myers, or even like Jamie Walker a little bit.
Yeah. And you could see, I mean, the last guy that they had kind of like this was maybe John Schreiber, but his arm slot wasn't quite this low, I don't think. So, but yeah, he had a lot of success when he came over after the trade. And he said, it never hurts to have an interesting look in your bullpen. And then, Madison, we talked about, he didn't pitch at all this year because he had Tommy John surgery in March. And so who knows when he'll be back on the mound. It's probably June or July. But that almost made him more attractive as a Rule 5 pick, because you only technically have to have the guy in your active roster for 90 days. So a team could have taken him, kept him on the IL for 2 months, started rehab assignments down there, and then brought him up in late June or whatever, and basically stashed him in their bullpen, held him maybe 15 appearances, 20 appearances the entire year. And then you've got a guy who's got back into the bullpen stuff. The question with him was kind of control, but what were you going to say? Sorry.
I was going to say he was a reliever. He was a reliever of the year last year.
Yeah. Yeah. Because he struck out like 12, 13 batters per inning or per 9 innings. The walks were like about 4, but nothing crazy. But he had a really interesting fastball, basically straight over the top, and with tons of ride, like 21, 22 inches of induced vertical break. And then he has a hard downer breaking ball and a pretty good changeup too, which is surprising. And that wasn't a particularly good breaking ball right there, but he has one. Yeah, when he's healthy, he's a legit potential setup man, the closer down the road. So he's an exciting one. Again, needs to throw a few more strikes, and that usually takes a while to come back. But if you're watching, you saw that last pitch had some really nice ride on it. You could just see it kind of just explodes through the zone.
Another reliever too from the northeastern corridor as well. I mean, this is this is
from Bryant, right?
Yep, which is in upper state New York, I believe, and the same area where you saw Jason Foley come out of, and Tigers seem to have. Oh, this is Blake Holub. Why did Blake Holub on there? I forgot why I put him in there. Oh, I think I put him as like an honorable mention, I believe.
Yeah, we had
trade him.
There's a video of when Tyler Madison came up to Erie last year. He didn't give up a hit in his first 11 innings.
Yeah.
So we put that entire run together because it was really impressive. So you can watch that if you want. But yeah, so there's 3 interesting arms. We may see 1 or 2 of them. We may see none of them. We may see all 3 of them this year, depending on how it goes. But and again, they might be a situation where 1 or 2 of those guys then gets tried to sneak back through waivers and added back down to Toledo. But yeah, just adding some bullpen depth after last year when the bullpen was used quite a bit. So that's fun. And I don't know, the only I thought maybe they'd add Liam Hicks, but it's tough. I think that's kind of a calculated gamble where they're like, yeah, nobody's gonna keep a catcher for an entire season who doesn't hit for power, really. But we'll see. Rule 5 is, I think, the 12th, the 11th, something like that.
Yeah, you don't want a catcher unless he's going to be. I mean, use him as a bullpen catcher, but I sincerely doubt it at that point. But no, it's. I think the Tigers. I mean, Harris had indicated they were going to focus on pitching, and this is a prime example of that. Owens did get up to 99 a couple times during the playoffs too, and I think personally for the Tigers, it's just a matter of plug and play with these relievers, and that's all there is to it. And it could be, as you mentioned, Chris, Lee. Who knows? One of them could be just a placeholder for a potential roster move down the line, where they might just want to let go to make room for somebody else. So, real quick, Richard, with a question here: would you rate McGonigal over Clark as a hitter? Well, McGonigal's number 1 in our system for a reason.
Yeah, we would, and we did.
Yeah,
we
did.
You could read it on the hit list. We had McGonigal as the number 1 hit tool in the system. I think Clark was 4th.
I believe so. Yes.
Yeah, it was McGonigal, Briseño, Lee, Clark. Yeah, I think McGonigal has not quite elite, but I think I put a 70 grade on his hit tool. Like he's a guy who's just going to hit. And Clark, I think, could get there. He's just not quite there yet. You see him post videos where he's. Yeah. I don't doubt that kid's work ethic at all, or his trying to get to that point. I just don't think he's found the swing that he wants, his ideal swing, quite yet. Which is kind of all the more remarkable that he's performed as well as he has so far. But McGonigal's swing, like, there's nothing wrong with it. He hits everything. So yeah.
Yeah, and again, we also did a video on that too. So if you want to check out the hitter one too, we have the hitter one, power one, and next up will be best defense system before we get to pitching heavy in December. So don't forget to check out all our great content over at TigersMLReport.com. There is some articles there on Jose Briseño and Theon Lizarro, who we had a chance to talk to. I had a chance to sit in at a press conference last week, but like I said, I've been traveling a little bit, so I finally get a chance to catch up a little bit and write. So it'll be good to be back behind the desk. And again, if you want something for Christmas, for the Tiger fan and you're a fan of the website, go to redbubble.com/Tiger Minor Report. And of course, there's your PayPal donation button that's always available. And that, again, goes back into the website. And yeah, so again, plenty of changes. Stuff like I said, there's some stuff on the horizon for us. Just trying to get past November and the holidays and all that stuff. So
Yeah, and you know, before long, I think we're probably going to redoing our top 30 or top whatever list. You know,
yeah,
it's
you're right.
after
Top
a lot of things
31.
have happened in the last few months, and so that's not too far away.
Yeah, no, you're right. That's a good call. I mean, that's probably by the end of December, there could be a whole different roster for all we know at this point. I don't. I feel like it's way too quiet right now, and I feel like something's going to happen. I don't. I mean, do we have any indication of what's going to happen?
I feel like it's usually the first, like the week after Thanksgiving and the first 2 weeks of December is usually when a lot of stuff goes down. It feels like to me that's when the Tigers went and signed Baez and Erod and all that stuff. But maybe that's not a good memory to bring up for people.
Oh no, they don't want to hear about bias right now at this point. But like I said, we will more likely we'll probably drop a new episode of the Motor City Metrics podcast next week. Enjoy your holidays, enjoy your Thanksgiving, whatever you decide to do, however you do. Be safe out there. Eat. I will be definitely having a lot of food this weekend. I mean, although I've been cutting back on how much I've been eating, so we'll see how that goes.
And congratulations to your brother. We don't need to necessarily publicize that, but
yeah. Oh yeah, my older brother's getting married this weekend, so that'll be. Thank you. That was a surprise that came out of nowhere. So I'm looking forward to making a best man speech somewhere with a gin and tonic in my hand, and there we go. So yeah, it'll be good times. We'll talk to you soon. Have a good week. Have a good week, everybody.